Hey, what's up, Peace students? It's Pastor E here, and welcome to our Sundays Online. Today, we're going to be diving into our new series entitled Exodus 14, Red Sea Rules, and it's all about the Israelites' great escape from Egypt in chapter 14 of the book of Exodus in our Bibles. Well, they were facing some really tough times, and we face some pretty frustrating and challenging times in our lives today. Their story is going to help us understand 10 ways that we can face the tough times of life and still experience God's best. So let's dive right in with rules number 1 and 2. But before I dive in, let's talk about Moses and the Israelites, because we need to get caught up on their story. Well, Moses was born an Israelite. They were Hebrews back in the Bible times. And during this time in Exodus chapter 14, the people of Israel were slaves in Egypt, and they well outnumbered the Egyptians. Well, the Pharaoh of Egypt, that's their king, he felt like there were just too many of them, and they could turn on Egypt at any time. So he decided they needed to do something about it. And so he made an order that every baby boy that was an Israelite would be killed. And Moses was born during that time. His mother knew that there was something special about him, and that God had a special purpose for him, just like you and me. So she wanted to protect him. So she put him in a basket, and she put that basket in the river. Well, that river went right by the Pharaoh's palace, and the Pharaoh's daughter found Moses. She took him and raised him as her own child. One day when Moses was all grown up, God came to Moses, and he told Moses, hey, I want to free my people from slavery in Egypt, and I want you to lead them to freedom. Moses couldn't believe that God wanted him to do something so big. I mean, that was going to be a big job, a big task, and he wanted Moses to do it. Wow. So Moses went to Pharaoh and told him that God wanted him to let the people free. But Pharaoh wouldn't listen. He was not trying to have any of that at all. So God sent 10 plagues. That's 10 bad things to happen in Egypt that finally made Pharaoh decide that he was going to let the people free. God's plan to free Israel worked, and now they're free and headed toward the promised land. But instead of taking the shorter route, God wanted them to take a different route, a longer route. But he did it on purpose. Now, let's pick up the story here in our Bibles. Exodus chapter 14, verses 1 through 4 reads, Then the Lord gave these instructions to Moses. Order the Israelites to turn back and camp by Pi-hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea. Camp there along the shore, across from Baal-Zephon. Then Pharaoh will think the Israelites are confused. They are trapped in the wilderness. Once again, I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will chase you. I have planned this in order to display my glory through Pharaoh and his whole army. After this, the Egyptians will know that I am Lord. So the Israelites camped there as they were told. So God changed the escape route, and you know what? God knew exactly what he was doing. The first rule is this, that we are all here on purpose. See, we have to realize that God knows exactly where we are, and he put each of us here on purpose. He knew where Moses was when he was a baby and he was in danger. He knew where Moses was when he was in the palace, and he knew where Moses was when he was an adult, and God chose him to lead the people of Israel. God knew where Israel was. He knew that they were enslaved and that they needed to be free. But God had a plan for them, and just like Moses and the Israelites, God has a plan for us. Sometimes it's hard to trust God's plan because God's plan seems more difficult. It seems more challenging than the way that seems the best. But we have to realize that God's plan is the best way for it. And just like it was the best way forward for Moses and the Israelites. Sometimes in life, our situation can seem so frustrating that we can lose our faith. But our Bible reminds us of this in Jeremiah 29:11. For I know what I have planned for you, says the Lord. I have plans to prosper you, not to harm you. I have plans to give you a future filled with hope. So remember that wherever you find yourself in life, that you are here on purpose. And God knows exactly where you are. He knows about all the things that you are facing. The easy things, the tough things, the frustrating things. The frustrating things like coronavirus. See, God knows that we are all crazy bored being stuck inside. He knows that for some of us, school is harder when it's done online. He knows that we're missing spending time with some of our closest family members and friends. And he knows that some of our families are having some difficult times with keeping food on the table and having difficult times with money right now. But God also knows that this is an opportunity for us to activate our crazy faith. And it's an opportunity for us to trust that He has everything under control. It's an opportunity for us to grow closer to Him. Because like we said before, God's plan for it is the best plan for our lives. And our Bible tells us this in Romans 8:28. It says, and we know that all things work together for good for those who love God, who are called according to His purpose. See, Israel might have felt like they were alone, but God was with them every step of the way. The Bible even tells us that when Israel traveled, there was a cloud during the day that represented the Spirit of God, and a pillar of fire by night that represented the Spirit of God that led their path forward. And what we can understand from that is that God is definitely always with us, even when it seems like we're alone, even when it seems like we're in a tough situation, that God is with us, and the presence of God brings us protection. And we can trust that just like with Israel, our God is a God that will never leave us alone. Now, let's talk about rule number 2. God over everything. See, what we have to realize is that God is bigger than everything that we could ever face in our entire lives. And as we face tough situations, let's not focus on our own abilities, what we can and what we cannot do. But let's trust that we have a God who can take us through the most impossible circumstances. See, for Israel, being free from slavery, that seemed impossible, but God did it. And crossing the Red Sea, that seemed impossible. But as we'll learn later this week, God did it for them. God's plan for Israel didn't make sense. There was an easier way for them to get where they needed to get. But our Bible tells us that God did this so that He could prove to Israel and Pharaoh and everyone watching that God was in control of this whole situation. And just like Israel, we have to remember that God is in control of the situations that we're facing right now. God's in control of coronavirus. See, this whole situation seems impossible. We were all wondering, when is it gonna end? Are we gonna be able to go back to school? Are we gonna always have to wear a mask? Are things gonna go back to the way they were before this all began? I'm here to encourage you today that although we're facing some really tough times and they're really frustrating times, that we will get through this because we serve a God who's bigger than what we're facing right now. I want to leave you with this last promise from our Bibles. For nothing will be impossible with God. That's all I have for you. But remember, you are here on purpose, and God is bigger than every situation that you can ever face. Take care. Peace.